right, so this is going to be another movie review. This one's called French Connection 2, 1975. This is going to be something that I'm trying to recall how this got on my list. I think Adrian said it was rubbish, so of course I had to add it. I'm giving it 1 out of 5 stars. Hate this flick. The French Connection was only the beginning. This is the climax. Gene Hackman returns as Popeye Doyle, stalking the Frenchman through Marseille on a suicide chase to the edge of his own life. Gene Hackman, French Connection 2. Co-starring Fernando Ray, Bernard Fresson, a Frankenheimer film. John Frankenheimer directed the greatest movie of all time, a movie called Seconds. And none of his other movies even come close to Seconds. French Connection 2 is a 1975 U.S. neo-noir action thriller film starring Gene Hackman and directed by John Frankenheimer. It is a sequel to the 1971 film The French Connection, and it continues the story of the central character, Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle, who travels to Marseille in order to track down French drug dealer Alain Chamier, played by Fernando Ray, who escaped at the end of the first film. Hackman and Ray are the only returning cast members. And we get Ed Lauter thrown in there for good measure. Distributed by 20th Century Fox. Release date May 21st, 1975. Running time 119 minutes. Just shy of the 2-hour mark. Way too long movie. And a lot of the movie is just Gene Hackman high as a kite on heroin, where he's suffering from withdrawals. After Fernando Ray just dumps him on the street. After he's been injected with heroin about 5 times. Country, United States. Language is English and French. Budget $4.3 million. And box office $12.5 million. Of course, there's nobody in the chat room. Picking up 4 years after the original left off, New York City police officer Jimmy Popeye Doyle, Gene Hackman is still searching for elusive drug kingpin Alain Charmier. Fernando Ray orders from his superiors send Doyle to Marseille to track down the criminal mastermind and bust his drug ring. What is a U.S. cop doing in France? And the French policemen are wondering the same thing. Once in France, Doyle is met by English-speaking Inspector Henry Barthélemy, played by Bernard Fresson, who resents his rude and nasty crime-fighting demeanor. Doyle then begins to find himself as a fish out of the water in France, where he's confronted with a language he cannot understand. Doyle is shown around the police station where he finds his desk is situated directly outside the toilets. Bartholomew informs Doyle that he has read his personnel file. Bartholomew is aware of his reputation, and Bartholomew especially hopes he has not brought a gun with him, as it is strictly forbidden in France for visiting police officers from other countries to carry firearms. Okay, so he's a magnet for the drug dealer and he can't pack any heat, but he did put a gun in the lining of his suitcase. So he's got a little gun holder on his ankle. Doyle continues to struggle with the language. Doyle tries to order drinks in a bar. He eventually makes himself understood, befriending a bartender while buying him drinks, and they eventually stumble out of the bar together at closing time, followed by two men. The next day, while Doyle is watching a beach volleyball match, Charmier sees him from a restaurant below. Determined to find Charmier on his own, Popeye escapes from what are in fact French police escorts keeping watch on him. Doyle doesn't understand that he's being used as bait by French police to lure Charmier out. Oh, that's the reason why there's a New York City cop in France. Oui. The same night, Charmier sends his men to capture Doyle, killing one of his watchers in the process. And they take him to a secluded, seedy hotel in the Old Quarter for interrogation. For several weeks, Doyle is injected with heroin in an effort to force him into capitulation. Scenes of his growing addiction follow, including one in which an elderly lady, played by Kathleen Nesbitt, visits him in his befuddled state. Initially, she seems compassionate to his plight, but a change in the camera angle reveals her track marks. The gentle old lady steals his watch. Meanwhile, Bartholomew has sent police everywhere to search for Doyle. Charmier interrogates a needy Doyle about what he knows, but Doyle says he was sent here just because he's the only one who can recognize Charmier. Charmier believes Doyle, so Charmier lets him go. After one massive injection, Doyle is dumped barely alive but addicted in front of police headquarters. Grueling scenes of resuscitation and drug withdrawal follow. You didn't have to put that much padding in the movie. Come on, Frankenheimer. Give me a break. In his effort to save both Doyle's life and his reputation, Bartholomew immediately quarantines Doyle in the police cells. And Doyle begins his cold turkey withdrawal from heroin, supervising his recovery, and that aside with both emotional support and taunts, questioning his toughness. Bartholomew ensures that Doyle completes the cycle of physical withdrawal. They're trying to make heroin look like more addictive than cigarettes. When he is well enough to be on his feet, Doyle starts back on the road to regaining his physical fitness. He searches Marseille and, finding the hideout he was brought to, sets it on fire. He breaks into a room at a hotel and he discovers Charmier's henchman, whom he pursues and interrogates as to Charmier's whereabouts. Here's another forced confession. Like that always works in the movies. A delivery of opium is taking place at the harbor. Doyle, Bartholomew, and other inspectors rush to the boat that is being unloaded, and they engage Charmier's henchmen in a gun battle in a dry dock. The thugs open the spillways. Water starts rushing in. Doyle and Bartholomew are trapped. The henchmen and the policemen are killed, but Doyle rescues Bartholomew. Isn't that nice? French police hold Doyle responsible for the policeman's death. French police want to send Doyle home, but Doyle believes that the deal is not done. Doyle convinces Bartholomew, who owes him one, to keep watch over the ship. Even though they're friends now, he still calls them the a-hole word. They eventually spot the ship's captain on his way to meet Charmier's lieutenant, whom Doyle recognizes. A tailing ensues, taking the police to the drug warehouse, which they raid, but they are met with a barrage of fire. Doyle picks up a gun. Doyle kills a gangster machine gunning them. Charmier's lieutenant and other men escaped with the drugs on board a van, but Bartholomew closes the warehouse door and he stops them. The driver goes straight through the window like Police Story 2 and another movie I just saw. Meanwhile, once again, Charmier has escaped. Doyle makes an exhausting foot chase of Charmier, who is sailing out of the harbor on his yacht. After spotting Charmier in the distance, Doyle catches up with the boat at the end of the pier. Doyle takes his gun out of his holster, and Doyle calls Charmier's name. You can pretty much guess what happens next. It's a very abrupt ending. And if you're bored at the 2-hour mark and your eyes drift like mine did, you might miss what happened at the ending. John Frankenheimer had lived in France for a number of years when he agreed to make the film. I like the script. I like the characters. I like the Hackman character in France. And not speaking a word of French, it's a very difficult film because we wanted in no way to rip off the first one, which was one of the best films I've ever seen. I want to make a movie that stands on its own as a movie. Frankenheimer also admitted he made the film in part because of the financial failure of The Impossible Object. I want to make pictures that one sees, he said. There's a great public out there and you have to reach them. Otherwise, you're not in the movie business. The Impossible Object? I'll have to look that one up. The music was composed and conducted by Don Ellis, who returned from the original film. A soundtrack CD was released by Film Score Monthly in 2005, and it paired with the music from the first film. On release, French Connection 2 attracted positive reactions from the press, and it fared well at the box office, though nowhere near as well as its predecessor. The review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes gives the film a score of whopping 82% based on 39 reviews and a rating average of 6.6 out of 10. The consensus summarizes flawed and more conventional than his predecessor. French Connection 2 still offers a wealth of dynamic action and gritty characterizations. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 2.5 out of 4 stars, feeling that Doyle's heroin detox sequence halfway through the film, while well acted by Hackman, stripped the film's momentum. Yeah, no kidding. That's when I started to lose interest. It was boring. Why do I want to see Gene Hackman rolling around on a bed, squinting and squirming for like 30 minutes? He said that if Frankenheimer and his screenplay don't do justice to the character of Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle, they at least do justice to the genre, and this is better than most of the many cop movies that followed the French Connection into release. Vincent Canby wrote in his review in the New York Times, Popeye is a colorful and interesting, though hardly noble character, and when the Marseille drug people kidnap him, forcibly create a heroin habit in him, and then release him, you have a very special kind of jeopardy that the film and Mr. Hackman exploit most effectively. Arthur D. Murphy of Variety called the film an intelligent action melodrama with a performance from Hackman that was so excellent as to suggest the possibility of winning another major award for the same character in a sequel film. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune awarded 3 stars out of 4 and wrote, too many Popeye histrionics turns one of the screen's more compelling characters into a bit of cartoon, and when Hackman is shot full of heroin by the Frenchman's thugs, once again the action is overplayed. Despite these objections, French Connection 2 concludes with a wallop that argues persuasively for its being seen. Paul D. Zimmerman wrote in Newsweek that Doyle's drug addiction in the middle of the film stalls the story, and that the action-packed climax seems executed for those seeking the shoot-'em-up sequel that Frankenheimer apparently wanted to avoid. If the movie ultimately doesn't work, this can be said in Frankenheimer's defense, that with every night probably much pressure to do so, he refused to rip off the French Connection as so many films with other names already had. Charles Chaplin of the Los Angeles Times wrote, French Connection 2 is an audience picture, bold and vigorous, opting for action rather than nuance. There is none of the lingering irony of French Connection 1. Vivid characterizations and plot are all, and they are whiz-bang. Gary Arnold of the Washington Post wrote, this is not a sequel that was crying to be made. John Frankenheimer's direction of French Connection 2 isn't bad, but it also isn't ingenious and exciting enough to compensate for the perfunctory screenwriting. French Connection 2 earned North American rentals of $5.6 million, surpassing its $4.3 million budget. On the DVD commentary of the film, lead actor Gene Hackman remarked that the disappointing box office may have been due to the 4-year gap between releases of the original and sequel. In 2009, Empire rated French Connection 2 to be the 16th greatest film sequel. What do people see in this? In either film? I dislike both films. I do not like the franchise here. Especially the sequel. I may have rated the original higher than the sequel. I may have given the original 2 out of 5. I don't remember really. Anyways, French Connection 2, 1975. 1 hour, 59 minutes. Way too long. There's the movie poster again. Not a great movie poster. It gets a whopping 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb. 22,000 ratings. Popeye Doyle travels to Marseille to find Alan Charmier, the drug smuggler who eluded him in New York. All right. This was nominated for 1 BAFTA award. More like this. The French Connection. The French Connection 3. The Poseidon Adventure and Under Fire. I want to see the French Connection 3. I've got to see the complete franchise now. Even though I dislike the first 2, I've got to be a completist and check out French Connection 3 to see if there's any redeeming quality, because it's much lower rated than the first 2. I don't even think Gene Hackman is in it. Somebody else plays Popeye. Gene Hackman almost passed on this film. He felt that the length of time between the original and the sequel would hurt the film's chances for success. And he was right. In the DVD commentary, Hackman suggested this was the reason for the film's disappointing box office performance. In the first bar scene, Popeye Doyle eats an egg that changes from partially eaten to whole again and back again while he tries to talk to French girls. Yeah, good luck with that. Bunch of scantily clad shanty tramps from France. Wee wee. Jimmy Doyle is quoted as saying Jack Daniels. French barkeeper says Jacques Cui. Jimmy Doyle says Jackie, yeah, Jackie Daniels. French barkeeper, huh? Jimmy Doyle, Scotch, right there, El Scotcho. French barkeeper, whiskey. Jimmy Doyle, here we go. French barkeeper, avec glace, with ice. Jimmy Doyle says, yeah, in a glass. Crazy credits, opening credits, prologue, Marseille. German theatrical and VHS releases were marginally cut to secure the not under 16 rating from the FSK. Later releases, starting with the DVD era, all cuts were waived. This film has a lot of blasphemy, but no nudity. Featured in Making the Connection, Untold Stories of the French Connection, 2001. Soundtracks La Marseillaise. Music by Claude Joseph Roget de Lisle. Performed by the band during the money exchange. All right. Here's a review that's more flattering than mine. Under featured reviews, Alexander Davies 99382, dated June 25th, 2017. And the title of the review on IMDb is Very watchable, but not in the same league as the previous one. This reviewer gives it a 7 out of 10 on IMDb. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10. I hate this flick. Right, so I'm going to try to look for two movies. The Frankenheimer one and the French Connection 3. All right, here it is. It is no surprise that a sequel to the masterpiece, The French Connection, was commissioned. After all, the 1971 film helped to define a much more realistic kind of Hollywood movie, and the 1971 film is in a league of its own. Gene Hackman brought so much depth to the tough cop, Popeye Doyle, in the hands of a lesser actor. The character could have easily become one-dimensional. Released in 1975, French Connection 2 is actually very good on its own terms. Naturally, Gene Hackman was brought back, and so was Fernando Rey as the drug dealer who eluded capture in the previous film. Aside from actor Ed Lauter, every cast member in the sequel is a French, apart from Hackman. It made sense to have this 1975 film, seeing as there were a few loose ends from before being set and filmed in Marseille. We see more vulnerable side to Popeye Doyle. He doesn't know any area of France. He has never been to that particular country before. So his being on alien territory makes him a target in more ways than one. There are some good action scenes which keep the viewer interested, but the film suffers from overlength. No kidding. How long are you going to drag out Gene Hackman on a bed suffering from heroin withdrawal? If the running time had been trimmed by about 15 minutes, then the narrative would have been stronger. Duh. This is no fault of the director, John Frankenheimer. He certainly deserves more recognition as he made some very good films. He made the best of the best. Seconds. The drug addiction reference makes for rather uncomfortable viewing as we see firsthand Doyle's graphic and disturbing withdrawal symptoms. I thought they were boring. I can understand why this was included in French Connection 2, as Fernando Rey is determined to rid himself of this cop who has been a thorn in his side from day one. He will employ any means necessary to rid himself of his adversary. However, the drug addiction took too much screen time. Are we starting to see a consensus, common theme here? Regardless, it is a testament to how tough Doyle is, as his fighting spirit is still there. Surviving his ordeal only makes him that more determined to catch his man. The French police with whom Doyle works view him with a certain degree of suspicion and concern. After all, Doyle's reputation precedes him. There isn't so much of the humor or camaraderie that is so evident in the previous film, but one scene that is quite droll is as follows. When Gene Hackman goes to the bar and he can't make himself understood very well as his French is limited and the barman's English is even worse, then after a few drinks together, they merrily walk the streets of Marseille after the bar is closed. That was a good scene. This isn't a classic, but worth viewing all the same. There were plans by 20th Century Fox to produce a third French Connection film, with Gene Hackman being paired with Richard Pryor as his new partner. It was scheduled for production about 1979. That sounds interesting. A shame it didn't happen. But there is a different French Connection 3, which I am going to look up, see if I can find French Connection 3. That looks like it might be good. These first two are real stinkers. Why do people watch this stuff? I don't understand. Am I off? Let me know what you think of French Connection 2 in the comments. I'll probably get some people who say it's much better than I'm making it out to be, but I couldn't find any redeeming qualities, even when the Ed Lautner character seemed to be a corrupt government official. He's not in the movie much at all. He's in for like 10 minutes tops. Release date May 21st, 1975. US. Country of origin US. Language is English and French. Oui. Also known as Quai da Moi Pop 2. Filming locations Marseille, Broches du Rhône in France. Production company 20th Century Fox. Box office 4,340,000 estimated. Gross worldwide 12,484,444. And gross US and Canada $12,484,444. So what is Gene Hackman talking about that it didn't really make money? Is he saying that they wasted $8 million on marketing? Technical specs, runtime, an hour 59 minutes, too long. That other reviewer said cut 15 minutes out. I say cut 59 minutes out. This is in color, and the aspect ratio is 1.85 to 1. So there you have it. French Connection 2. I don't know how it got on my list. It could have been an Adrian recommendation or a Karate Man recommendation. Or it could have been Adrian said it was rubbish and I added it anyway. Those are the only three scenarios I can think of for getting this on my list. I don't think Karate Man recommended this one, but I could be wrong. All right, going down the pike, Hell's House 1932 is up next, followed by The Last Days, The Passion and Death of Jesus the Christ with Jonathan Romy, 2021. That's second on my list. And then Under Siege, 1992. So those are the next three coming down the pike. Thanks for checking out my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry that I didn't like this one if you're a French Connection franchise fan. But I'll look up that relatively unknown John Frankenheimer film from 1973. And I'll look up French Connection 3, see if I can find them. Add them to my list. Laters.